We will call to meeting the Special District Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. Madam Clerk, roll call, please. Here.
Present.
Here.
Here.
Present.
Here. Thank you. We will have a moment of silence led by the Pledge of Allegiance from Councilman Trodrick McCoy. Do we have any additions, deletions, or substitutions to the agenda?
None from staff, Madam Chair.
Any from the board? Can I have, do we have any disclosures for this agenda in front of us tonight? From the board or from staff?
None from
Okay.
staff, Madam Chair.
Let me get a motion to adopt the agenda.
I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Yes.
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 Yes. Consent agenda. All matters listed under this item are considered to be routine and action will be taken by one motion. There will be no separate discussions of these items unless the board member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Are there any issues in regards to our consent agenda? Can I get a motion to approve the consent?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. We will come to our item of awards and presentations. Madam Clerk? Thank you. City Manager Evans?
Madam Chair and members of the board and members of our community, we've had the opportunity over the last year to work towards looking to bring a new utility district online as quickly as possible. So as we went through the process, we looked at some conventional and some standard construction processes that we shared with the board in workshops. And we have come across a mechanism that allows for us to bring a new utility district online within 36 months. As we've had presentations over the past couple of months, we've outlined some of the things that staff is currently working on, some things that are in the future, but more importantly, getting to this particular point. This evening's presentation will highlight some of the things that we have done, but more importantly, what are things that we are looking to do in the future to bring a $100+ million new water treatment facility to Riviera Beach. We know that public safety as well as our water that we consume are the two most important elements as it relates to municipal functions. And so this presentation will get into probably the most expensive and the most important capital expenditure the city will undertake. We all know that our utility treatment plant was built in the late 1950s and has not seen substantial upgrades since its construction. So staff will walk through some of the processes that established the utility special district and what we are doing to bring a state-of-the-art water treatment facility to Riviera Beach. If everything goes as planned, we are hopeful that we can start construction-related activities on the site in October of 2021. That requires us to be aggressive. That requires us to be on top of every nuance associated with this process, and ultimately to have the support of the board moving forward. Leading this particular initiative and endeavor is Ms. Deirdre Jacobs, who is the Acting Executive Director of the Utility Special District and will lead the presentation this evening. Ms. Jacobs.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Chairperson Botel, other council persons in your respective places, Mr. Evans and Mrs. Nguyen. For the record, my name is Deirdre Jacobs, and I'm the Acting Executive Director of the Utility Special District. We're really excited to be here this evening with you to bring to you a project that we've been working on for a few months now. Hopefully, we'll be able to come to some resolve this evening with regards to direction from you as to how we move forward. The overall goal of our project is to bring about a new water treatment facility that provides quality water for our customers. With that said, we have a PowerPoint presentation to present to you. Our first presenter is Mr. Sherman, our Finance Director.
Good evening, everyone. Randy Sherman, District Finance Director. I guess I get designated as the historian of the utility district, since I think out of this group I probably have the most time in. I have literally gone back when I first got here with the city back in 2012. Literally went back to 2004 and tried to pull together as many records as I possibly could to try to understand exactly what we had in the utility district. I have all of the bond documents, which of course then have all of the files and records and everything that goes along with that. I have presentations from 2004. I have draft charters. I have as much as I could possibly lend my hand on. So if you have a historical question about the district, I worked with Pam Ryan, who was in the city attorney's office at that time. I've worked with Phil Gilden at Greenberg Traurig. So I've got contacts with all of the people to try to get all of the data. But in essence, what happened is in 2004, September of 2004, that was when the Utility Special District was created. Okay, it was a $51 million transaction. The utility district went out and borrowed $31.5 million and then used obviously some cash that it had on hand. And then what it did in essence is it bought the utility district from the city. So it paid off all the debts, it paid off all its accounts payables, and assumed all of the assets. Under the charter, the city council does serve as the district's board, which I know you all know. I will tell you a little piece of information. That was not the initial plan. I do have a charter that says it was supposed to be a separate board, but the final charter did make the council the district board. As part of the transaction, and this was really, the third bullet up there was really the reason why this transaction occurred. As part of the transaction, the city received $22.3 million to put into capital projects. So in essence, what the city did is it took an asset that had value and sold it and took $22.3 million and put it into capital projects. Right now, out of that $22.3 million and about another $4 million of investment earnings since 2004, there's about $500,000 that is currently unencumbered. All of the money has been spent. It was initially intended for city facilities. City facilities didn't get off the ground, and over the years, certain projects have chipped away at that money. That is currently the balance that's there, is the dollars that we're now using for the municipal facilities.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
did I hear you say 500,000 that was unencumbered?
Right now, there's only about $500,000 left. That is, it's in the municipal facility accounts, but there's no encumbrances on those funds at this point.
And, approximately, what year was that?
That's as of today,
Right, but this deal was consummated in 2004?
2004,
Okay.
yes. Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
So noted.
okay, the special district, you know, again, your powers that are in the charter, you know, you adopt resolutions and budgets and, you know, you do have the authority to borrow, which we have done since I've been here. We did a borrowing, we actually refinanced the 2004 bonds in 2014, and then in 2016, we issued for some new money. And again, that was all for, well, the 2014 was for a savings, and then 2016 was for capital improvements. The interesting thing, again, if you go back through the records, you'll see that there were no rate increases when this transaction happened. What they did is they actually determined the price of the utility based on the cash flow at that time and how much the utility could actually pay for debt service. So there was no rate increase at that point. Part of the $31.5 million did go into some utility capital projects. But there was no impact to staff. The utility district has no staff. All of the staff are city employees. They are paid on the city payroll. They're in the city pension. They get the city health insurance. And then because the utility district has no staff, the two entities, the district and the city, entered into this agreement for the city to provide all these services to the district. Trying to think if there's something, I guess I can take questions on this slide before I sit back down, but.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Sherman, you referenced $31.5 million, and I'm not sure I understand where that 31.5 that you mentioned.
Okay. So what they did is they took $31.5 million and they added another $19 million of cash. That's what they had on hand to make the $51 million, $53 million project. Actually, yeah, 31 and a half, and actually 19 and a half million of cash on hand. So the city got 22.3 million, and then what they did is they put 11 million into a capital improvement fund. They then had to put some money into some other capital projects. They had to fund the renewal and replacement account to the tune of $7.8 million. The total transaction itself was about $1.3 million for legal, underwriters, financial advisors and the like. And then they put the rest of it into escrow, the city share into the escrow. And then again, part of the payoff was, again, paying off old debt, paying off payables, in essence, clearing off the balance sheet.
Madam Chair, if I may ask Mr. Sherman a question. Mr. Sherman, the amount that was derived as a result of the transaction, how was that amount identified as to the value of the asset that was sold?
Again, what they did is they looked at the surplus cash flow that the utility had at that time, and they used that cash flow to determine how much debt service they could afford, and then based on the debt service, they calculated how much the bonds could be, and then once they determined the amount of bonds that could be borrowed, that's how they came up with the final numbers. So in essence, and you really think about it, the utility ratepayers have paid for the utility district twice, because the utility ratepayers built the system, and then when they sold the system, it was the city that got that $22 million, not the ratepayers, so now they're paying that $31.5 million of bonds.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Sherman, clarify, you said it was valued at the surplus cash flow. Is that above, anything above debt service?
At that point, they had very little debt service. They had a few little loans, but they didn't really have what we would consider debt service at that time. Now, the other thing that I will add, because the 22.3 million that they actually gave the city for the district really is undervalued. If you go back and you look at the value of the system based on its revenue flow and figure a 9 to 11% return if that was a private company, the system was probably valued at closer to 80 to 100 million at that point. So in addition to this $22.3 million, the city also receives 50% of the utility district's impact fee revenue every year. So every year, that is a payment that the district makes over to the city.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Sherman, I'm sorry, how much was that for the impact fees?
50% of their impact fees.
But,
So if they bring in 100,000, they keep 50 and the city gets 50.
right, but impact fees solely, because I know the impact fees are line by line itemized. Which impact fees are you speaking to?
Utility district impact fees. So when you have a new development, they pay for the library, parks, fire. They also pay a utility impact fee.
And can you tell or explain why 50% goes to the city?
Because, again, going back 2004, what the district paid to the city for the facility was not the true value of the facility. It was just what they could afford to pay at that time. So as they raise impact fees, they're in essence paying to the city to try to get up to a full value.
Follow up. So this impact fee that's being split between USD and the city, was that consummated or was that one of the terms inside of this agreement?
Yes, back in 2004.
Okay, and how long is this split of the impact fees to occur? Is it continue in perpetuity?
Continuing, yes. Yeah.
But at some point, Mr. Sherman, I guess not necessarily, but at some point you would almost think that this would be satisfied, correct?
Well, you would. I can tell you we certainly haven't received $60 million to get us up to the 80. And if you look at the plant nowadays, it's probably well over $100 million in value. But yeah, you would think at some point that would end, but in the agreement, I don't see an end date in there.
Follow up.
No, hold on a second. Commissioner Wattell had a
I
question.
just have a quick question, if you don't mind. How much of our current utility bill reflects the bond that was the cost of the bonding?
The initial bond or both debt? Just the initial one?
No, the total now.
Total debt now? Close to 20%. Close to 20%. I don't have an exact number, but that would be, yeah. Yeah, and again, if you go back to 2004 and you look at those old documents and the handwritten notes and everything else, this was not done to benefit the ratepayers or to benefit the district. All of the pluses, all of the pros are on the city side. The intent was to, in essence, refinance the utility district and pull out what I guess they thought was equity at that time of the $22 million.
Okay, is that it for your presentation?
I'm done. One slide they allowed me.
Okay, very good. Ms. Jacobs?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So as we move forward in our presentation, we wanted to bring to you tasks that we've been working on over the last year that is helping to realize how do we get to the new plant itself. There are many activities that we have done over the last year in terms of improvements to the plant. We're in the process of doing a well rehabilitation assessment. There's a chemical feed system replacement that is in process. We're also going to ask you this evening if you could approve or at least consider an activity that deals with making sure that the filters operate properly. We've had high service pumps rehabbed as well as the softeners at the facility. And then if you'll notice over time, the North Chemical building, the mesh covering that's been put around it to protect the public as well as our employees, efforts will be deployed to eventually remove the third floor of that building. We've also been in the process of working with our consultants to make sure that our consumptive use permit is renewed. We also went out and purchased land right on Blue Heron off of Avenue L, and it was done back, I believe, in December of 2019, where we purchased about almost two acres. The frontage on Blue Heron is right adjacent to where the Public Works facility is, and that's the prospective property that we'd like to utilize to construct the new water treatment facility. We've had an environmental assessment conducted by one of our consultants, and we've also worked with our rate consultant to assist us with coming up with rates that would be commensurate with us moving forward in a progressive manner. Next slide. The next slide will be the existing treatment initiatives, and that particular slide, as well as the following slide, will be presented to you by Nigel Grace. Nigel is one of the consultants that we work with on a continuing services contract, and he's intimately familiar with the activities over at the water treatment plant.
If you'll indulge me, I'll just stand here and present the couple of slides. Chairperson and Councillor, I do appreciate this opportunity. I'm Nigel Grace with the consulting firm Brown and Caldwell. As we've had some of these workshops, as Mr. Evans suggested earlier in the past, one thing that was established, and I think repeated here tonight, is that the existing treatment plant, dates back to the late 50s, early 60s. The technology in place today is the same exact technology that was in place 60 years ago. And the equipment in place, much of it is, very, very similar to what was installed 60 years ago. So the infrastructure, just, through the gravity and age, is fairly deteriorated. It's unreliable and underperforming. And, in looking at some evaluations in the past year to 2 years, it became evident that investing a lot of money into this existing treatment plant would improve the condition of the plant, but really won't improve the overall performance. You still have a treatment facility that's anchored on 60-year-old technology. So I think the whole notion of moving in a different direction was born probably over the last 18 months or so, to literally relocate the facility, embracing new technology, etc. One of the things that came out of that decision was the need to kind of keep this 60-year-old plant running for a few more years until such time that this new facility could be brought on board. So a number of actions have been taken over the last year or so to take care of some of the critical needs, the needs that really couldn't be left unattended to just because of the risks that they pose to the system. So, last summer, the district brought on board a couple of design-build contractors, and they've been very busy at work in engineering, permitting, and now they're moving into the construction of a number of critical improvements to the facility. These improvements generally will start being phased into commission later this summer through spring of next year. The improvements will generally enhance the reliability of the plant, the operational performance, safety, and customers will see a more stable and consistent water quality being delivered to the taps. Nothing close to what the new facility promises to deliver, but they won't be on kind of this seesaw of changing water quality anymore. So, like I mentioned, a number of projects, are well underway. Some of the projects, just to highlight some examples of recent projects, and you've been seeing the authorizations that have come before you for approval. There's new high service pumps in place. That's really enhance the reliability and ability to keep delivering water into the system on a fairly consistent basis. The sand filters, and I think that authorization is before you tonight, are in pretty bad shape and need to be rehabilitated, and I think there's an item in there before you for approval tonight. The last meeting, I believe, you approved a temporary sodium hypochlorite feed system that will allow the city to move away from gas chlorine, particularly during the period where the North Chemical building, the one with the structural damage, is being rehabilitated. It will eliminate the need for operators to be going back and forth into that building during demolition and will enhance the overall safety of the facility. Some of the core improvements that were approved last summer, like I said, have gone through design. We are already beginning to see delivery of major equipment, the RDP lamb silo being an example. So both design build contractors are very busy at work with improvements to the chemical feed systems and so on and so forth. The city is also, has an ongoing effort to assess its well fields and identify critical improvements there. And those improvements will be addressed, as they become evident going forward. So this is just to give you a little snapshot of what's going on out there. There's a lot of activity beginning at the plant. It's going to really kind of crest later this summer and taper off through early spring. And at that time, hopefully it will deliver a few good years of service until such time that this new facility is brought online. So with that, I'll turn back over to Ms. Jacobs.
So generally speaking, we've determined that there are approximately 5 goals that we'd like to attain as a part of this project. They are to produce and deliver high-quality water to our customers, construct necessary water supply wells for long-term sustainability, provide a high-quality work environment for our employees, engage local businesses and citizens in the construction of the project, and to fund the improvement costs effectively to minimize impacts to current customers. So basically what we want to do is to think of ways, creative ways, where we could bring about change not only for ourselves internally here in the utility district, but to also make sure that we include the residents in particular in any ways that we can in terms of job creation opportunities, as well as their ideas with regards to how we want to make sure the water plant is built in terms of their ideas, their desires, and their needs. So at some point in time, we will open it up to engagement to include the community as well. With regards to any rate increases, that is another issue that we are quite sensitive to. So we're seriously concerned that not only the council, but the community is involved in how we go about determining the rate increases that will need to be realized in order for us to move forward with a quality water treatment facility. Our project scope and description is primarily made up of how do we go about bringing forth a new water treatment plant? How is it that we make sure that our wells that we have, the existing ones, that they're in good enough shape that we can use them over at the new facility? And if they're not, how do we go about building new wells? How is it that we come about bringing forth grant opportunities so that we can use those grant opportunities to help to offset the cost in the event that we need to construct new wells? How is it that we make sure that our distribution system, the infrastructure is there so that when we have our new facility in place, that won't be a hiccup? We'll have the distribution center, the distribution, infrastructure in place, as well as our staff. How is it that we teach our staff to utilize these new systems in operations? We also are cognizant that we couldn't do this without working with many of the regulatory agencies. How is it that we engage those agencies to make sure that we comply with all of the authoritative regulations and guidelines that are in place, that we make sure that we follow those and that we build a plant that is ideal and one that is state of the art and one that can take us into the next 40 to 50 or 60 years or so. Recapping, We started this back in February of 2020. We've made many new improvements. We've made many improvements and provided new opportunities and new activities for the existing plant so that we can at least maintain and sustain where we are. We've diligently worked with regulatory agencies to make sure that we comply with different guidelines. So at this point in time, we ask, what is the next step in the process? How do we go about selecting a design consultant to help us to start to design and construct a new facility? And the last would be, we've always known that whenever we go through the design, bid, build process, that it is an extensive period of time. When we came before you in February of last year, our target was about 6 years or so. We know at this particular time that we've come up with an alternative where it is likely that we may be able to build our plant in the next 36 months. With that said, I'd like to introduce to you Colin Groff. Colin is with us from Black Creek Consultants. He has 30-plus years of utilities experience, and he's well recognized in the utilities community for constructing water treatment plants.
So, thanks, Ms. Jacobs. I'm really glad to be here. It's been great working. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Does it work? Okay, good. It's been great working with your staff. You have a great staff, and they have a great vision, and I've watched some of y'all's board meetings, and you guys have a great vision. And what I was asked is there a faster way to build a plant? And I've been involved in 70 or 80 plant projects in my career, and hundreds of water and sewer projects, and there may be a faster way, and that's what we're here tonight to talk about, is a better way to deliver a plant that can be faster, probably more cost-effective, and deliver a higher quality water faster to the customers, which I think is what everybody wants, and that was the goal. So I'm going to go through and talk a little bit about what that process is. Some of this will look familiar to y'all because you already do it. You already do projects this way. So I'll try not to spend too much time on it. But what we're talking about doing is doing what we call a progressive design build option, bringing in also an option to do what we call private equity funding, or public-private partnership. You guys are doing something very similar with your fire station. Forgot the number. Forgot the fire station number already. 88. 88, okay, I got it. So it's something you guys are familiar with and you've done as a city council, and the utility can use the same process. So the first step is really to release a request for qualifications. And what that does is you send out a request and ask for teams to come in and provide what are their qualifications and how would they deliver this project quickly and efficiently to you. That phase one, and then what that does is that leads to what we call a phase one of the project. And then during phase one, what this team does is they develop 60% design plans for all of the projects. They also develop what they call a guaranteed maximum price. That's the price that they will not exceed to build the project. And within that price, there's all kinds of parts to it. There's parts that'll be bid, there's parts that'll be, but it's a guaranteed price that the contractor's guaranteeing to you. At the same time, they can also develop, and we'll talk about the options here. We're talking about having them as an option develop a financial package for the district to consider. You could also finance it yourself during this same process. So the process really works for either way, and there's multiple ways to do the financing, and actually I have a slide on 3 ways that I think that you can consider moving forward. And that's not something you need to decide tonight. Financing comes through the process. So the other thing that we could do in phase one is and that's what Mr. Evans was referring to, is you'll start some early construction. Because what you want to do to deliver the plant fast, you need to get construction started as soon as possible. And so there's things on this project that can start at the end of this year, beginning of next year, if we stay on track and we stay on schedule and we get some things designed and out the door. The other thing you may want to do to speed it up is you're going to want to order some of the equipment that has really long lead times, such as a generator. Right now it takes 2 years to get a generator minimum. Could be 2.5 years. So you want to order those early, so when they're needed, they're coming in, so you're not waiting on them. So those would all be in that phase one contract to get that project started. So we're talking having, maybe in December of this year, having bulldozers on the site, moving dirt around and starting to build a project. And that's quicker than I think any other process could deliver. Then the next thing, once that GMP is delivered to the board, then you decide, is that a value price for what you're getting? And you can, all of these contracts are written, you can end it there. You own all the material, you can then go out and go a different direction. Generally, you don't, because the team has a motivation to deliver you the very best project at the very best price, because they want to continue and build the project, so they're going to do that. So it will come back to you as a board, you'll review it, and you'll say, yes, we agree with that, and then it'll go into what we call phase 2, which is finishing the design while they're doing construction. So they're finishing up some things they're not building, and the things they are building, they're already finished with the design, and they just continue going through the process. And then, of course, it's constructed and it's commissioned. And we're going to talk a little bit about the private equity funding and how that works. But if you do choose to go with private equity funding, we're not talking about any kind of operations contract, any kind of privatization. All it is a way to bring funding to the project to fund the plant and the fund outside of the city doing its own bonds. It doesn't have anything to do with operating the plant, and basically, it's no different than you borrowing the money and you pay it back and then you're done with the mortgage. If you go through private equity the way we're suggesting, is you're still borrowing the money, and when it's paid off, you're done. So it's the same process. It's just a little bit different because the money, and we'll talk about that in a second, the money, the actual debt does not go onto your debt service. It stays off your debt service. You still have the same payment. You still have the same money going out the door, but it doesn't count toward debt service, so it doesn't restrict you. But I wanted to stress that because a lot of times people get confused when they talk about a P3 is that means somebody's going to come in and operate your plant. That's not what we're talking about. No private operations. This is fully controlled by the utility throughout the project and throughout the many, many years or however many years you want. So with that, let's talk about this. This is what everybody wanted. They wanted to get a plant built faster. And this is a middle of the road schedule. Could it be a little bit faster with the right team? Maybe a few months faster. Could it be a little bit slower with the wrong decisions and some risk in there? It could be a little bit slower, but this is the middle of the road schedule. So it's about a 3-year project, and you can see selection of the team. That means if we started today, or if you decide today to move forward in this direction, we know we could have some construction started by the end of this year on that site. Takes about 4 months to get that team in place and that contract in place, and then it'll be about 6 months of design, but during that design, some of that construction can start. You do have some time all this has to come back to you again to award it, so you have some time for that. You do have some time because no matter how you finance it, you have to sell the bonds, and you can't sell the bonds until you know the exact price of the project, so that comes next. Some of this can overlap. That's where you can maybe save a little bit of time. And then you have the final design, permitting and construction, and 18 months is a reasonable amount of time for a plant this size. I've looked at several projects that are underway right now and been finished in the last 12 months, and this is very typical for plants of this size to be built. That doesn't mean every single item, but that means 18 months you're delivering nice, good, high-quality water. Maybe there's some items that you do in year 4 and year 5 because you want to pay for them then. Maybe you don't want to pay for them right up front. But the key is delivering that high-quality water as fast as possible. And then there's a startup. So that's a typical schedule for a process like this. The financing options, and there's really 3, Mr. Sherman and I've talked about this, and really this is mostly Mr. Sherman, and I'm going to steal his thunder and talk about it. And if I say something wrong, he can blame me. So that's the way it works. Turned up my microphone, so I don't know what happened. There, let's try that. Okay. So the first way is the utility would just go out and do their own $115 million. That's the estimated cost of the project right now, $115 million utility bond on top of the 2 bonds you already have right now. It would take about 3 to 5 months to do that, and it could be either a 20 or 30-year bond, depending on how you want to fund that. And the interest rates are pretty good right now, and they would be based on the utility's credit rating. The other idea we have is you could sell $150 million of what they call taxable bond, and that means that money can be invested and money can be made off it while you're spending it. So there's some advantage of that. And the reason it's 150 is because you would pay off your 2 current bonds, and you might be able to actually get this at a lower interest rate. So you would be saving money and spreading out these payments, which lowers the impact on your rates. So that's the second option that you have. And again, the same time period, 3 to 5 months. All of these can be done within this time frame. And then the third option is have these proposers actually offer an option to do what we call private equity, tax-exempt private equity bonding. And again, all that means is there's a special, and we'll talk about how this is done, but there's an entity set up that goes and borrows the money, builds the plant, and then you operate the plant just like you would. So it's no different than the city borrowing it. You just have another entity borrowing it for you. And again, there's some advantage to that, and we'll talk about the advantages in a minute. So that's the three financing options you have, and all three work within the faster time schedule. And what we're recommending, I think, as a team is we go through this process, and the one that's going to be the best for the utility is the one that's going to fall out of these. So you'll pick the one that's the best deal for whichever one comes out to be the best. Because we don't want to, we try to go down multiple paths to make sure you're always getting the best deal. So how does this work? And this is the one I want to spend, and some of y'all probably know this. I know you've looked at this, you're doing this on the fire station, so some of this may be old news, but what we're recommending is a tax-exempt funding, and one of the methods, and this is the method I'm going to talk about, and there are other methods besides this one. So there's a couple other methods that are tax-free, and there's some taxable methods, but this is the one that probably right now seems to fit the best, which is a 501c3, which is basically what happens is a special purpose entity. That's an LLC in Florida. It might be called Riviera Beach Utility Special District LLC. And it's set up in Florida, and its only purpose is to borrow money and build the plant. So doesn't do anything else. It doesn't operate, it doesn't do anything else. All it does is borrow the money and build the plant. And the way that works is they go out and sell the tax-free bonds, and they generally, you're going to pay, if you did it yourself, this may cost somewhere between 1/4 of a point to 0.4 points higher than what you could do yourself. It could be the same. It really is a lot based on the market and how the market looks at the project. These projects are very favorable in the market right now, so you're getting very, very good rates, as long as everything is in place to get those rates. So if you do go with the private financing, the contractor actually works for that special entity. It doesn't work for the city. So that actually eliminates some of the risk for the district, because that contractor's contract is with the SPE, and that's who pays the bills. There's some real advantages there also that we'll talk about in a minute. At the end of the lease, so basically the way it works is you would lease the property to this special entity that's only set up to do this. It doesn't do anything else. It leases the property, and it can pay you a lease payment, and then it bills the plant, and then you pay a lease payment back to it. Just like you would pay a bond, and it's the same amount you would pay. It's just you're paying it as a lease, because a lease, yes, it's on your books as payments, and it goes into it's something that you have to make sure your rates cover, but it doesn't count towards your indebtedness for the utility. So let's say you do something for 25 years, and in 15 years from now, you have a rapid growth, and you need to build something else. You have room then to grow that in your debt. So it gives you that flexibility in the future that you may or may not need. But you want to, one of the reasons this is positive, has a good idea, is because it does give you that flexibility. And the only purpose of it, again, is to borrow the money and build the plant. The utility is responsible for the entire, they call it a triple net lease. So the utility is 100% responsible for the plant. And whatever the condition of the plant is at the end of the lease, the utility gets the plant in that condition. So the utility has the incentive to keep that plant up, because you want to make sure you maintain your plant. Holding the mic and flipping slides here. So again, real quick, the utility controls the design and construction, but you don't own the contract. So you take some of the contract risk off yourselves. The SPE, the special purpose entity, legally owns the plant. So on paper, they own the plant, but it's just on paper, and you pay the lease. They can't foreclose on it. They can't come in and operate it. They can't do any of those things. All it means is if you choose not to pay your lease payment, they go to court and they get a judge to say you got to pay it. No different than if you bond it yourself and you don't pay a bond payment. The bondholders come in and go to a judge, and the judge says you got to make your payment. So it works the exact same way. It's very transparent to the customers. So there's a lot of flexibility. One is you can get a prepayment of the ground lease. So there's some opportunities there to do what we call rate stabilization funds. So you've heard earlier, we talked a little bit about, there are going to be some rate adjustments that are needed. Your utility needs them, but maybe we could do some rate stabilization with it, maybe. And we're not sure what it would look like yet. That's coming later. We're not going to discuss that tonight, but there is a possibility of that. There's a possibility, which you can also do in your own bonds, of configuring those payments. So maybe they're a little lower in the early years and a little higher, and you spread out your payments. And I think I gave this example to somebody today. It's like, you want a certain car, you can buy it in 3 years if you can afford the high payments, but maybe you need 6 years so you can actually afford the car. And that's really what we're talking about the plan, is you may want to spread those payments out a little bit so you can afford the high quality plant that you need. So you can also refinance the bond. You can short call the bond, what they call it. If you come up with money and there's a better rate, You can refinance that. Let's say that the federal government comes along and says, you know what, we want to give you $100 million. You could take that, pay off the bond, and then you own the plant. So the flexibility is there. It doesn't tie you to this for a long period of time. It gives you the flexibility. You can still save on the sales tax. So you get your sales tax savings on the project, which on a project this big is substantial. That's quite a bit of money. It goes back into the project. A lot of these, not because they're not allowed to make a profit, these companies that do this, they reinvest your funds during construction before you need it, and that interest goes back to the project. So it's a way to raise a little bit of extra money during the project, maybe pay for some extra things. Maybe there's some things you want that are a little bit extra, and you can say, if we raise this money in interest, we'll do these other things. So it's a way to raise a little bit more money. The money could go into other things also, but it's extra money into the project. And then also the thing is very flexible, so you can overlay other projects. So let's say you get a large grant in next year, you can overlay that grant on this and lower what money they would go out and borrow. So you can lay in other funding. The WIFIA is the Water Infrastructure Financing, and don't ask me all the rest of the things. You guys heard about it, I think, at your last meeting. I can't tell you what it's a federal program, but it's a very good program right now, and it has some good, and if you get into it, maybe that would fund 50% of this at a lower interest rate. You can do these two things together. They're not unique, they're not separate. So that's why one of the things about a nonprofit, a 501c3 does for you with private financing, it gives you a lot of those advantages. So with that, I'm going to go to the next slide. There are some project challenges on this. We want to make sure we talk about everything on these projects. The first one is, and we've talked about this several times, you're going to require some rate adjustments, regardless of whatever financial strategy you have. It's an expensive plant, and it has to be paid for. How we do that is based on how we proceed and how we can put these together. You definitely are going to need them. It's how do you do it? And what I always tell in my 34 years being in utilities is we want to make sure that the people least able to pay are the least impacted. So we want to try to figure out a way to do the rates as fair as possible and spread it out as long as possible, but you still have to pay for these things. The customers need to pay for it. So you're going to need that. And that's a challenge, but I think there's some really good solutions there. I've been working with this team, and I think that's coming back to you in a later date. I think there's some good ideas. But I don't want to promise anything because that's somebody else's. But the other thing is, too, is you could use this rate stable. There's a way to set up a rate stabilization fund that we could do in a project like this. I'm not promising you can do it, but it's a potential to do it. So if we go down this path, it's something we could explore. So that's an opportunity. I think the other opportunity is the faster you deliver the plant, I think we can reduce some of the money you're spending right now on the existing plant, because there's some things that maybe if you're going to wait 5 years to get a plant online, you have to do now. But if it's only 3 years, maybe we don't do as much, or maybe we save a little bit. So that's less money that what I call, it's not really wasted, but it's less sunk money into an existing facility that you're going to get rid of. So there's a possibility of that. We're diving into that right now to see what that looks like. The interest rates right now are extremely low, so the faster you get to the market, the better rates you're going to get. And that's true everywhere. The other thing that's happening that I didn't put on this list is construction costs are going up dramatically every 3 months. So the faster you can get to a guaranteed maximum price, the faster you're locking in a better price. And the longer you wait to get that, if you wait 12 or 14 months to design a plant or 16 months to design a plant and then bid it, you're a lot further out than where you would be doing this process. So it does give the opportunity to lock in the lower interest rates and the lower plant cost earlier because we're going to get there faster. So it does provide, the Progressive Design Bill does provide the district with a lot of flexibility. And again, it's something that's not new to the city. You guys are doing this in other projects, so it's not new to you. It's just a very big project doing it this way, but it's been done all over the state. It's not, it's a pretty clear process, pretty straightforward process. So with that, they asked me to put together what that would look like in a schedule, because pictures always tell 1,000 words. So, up at the top of this, it really shows what that expedited schedule looks like. Is you would pick your qualified team. They would do their 60% plans and bring you a guaranteed maximum price. You would finalize, and then if you approve that to move forward, and you approve it, it's not something that automatically happens. It comes to you and you say, yes, I approve it, or we want to stop there and we want to do something different. They're going to give you the best project, so we really want to continue to build the plant. But if something happens and you want to, let's say all of a sudden we want to wait 6 years or we want 8 years, you will have that off-ramp in the contract. You don't really want to take it unless you absolutely have to. But you make that decision, and then once you make that decision, they're starting construction and they're finishing the design and they're finishing their permits and they're doing all of that work together. And so, looking at that schedule, that's about a 3-year schedule. The other way that you would start, that's the typical way, the standard way of doing it, is you're going to be closer to 5 years, because you're going to have to engage a firm to design it, and that's going to take some time. You're going to have to design that. Now, some of these can overlap a little bit to shorten this time frame. Maybe it's 4.5 years. It could be 5.5 years, just like the 3.5 years could be 2.5, maybe it's 3.5. But it could flex a little bit based on, but it really is a 5-year process, and so that's really the comparison between the two processes. So staff, and I'm not staff, I'm just a consultant, but staff, this is really staff's recommendation, is where they're recommending to go ahead and develop and publish the RFQ to solicit a team to design, construct, and potentially finance the plant. Not necessarily. It could be financed by the utility. You would select a qualified team to negotiate a phase 1 contract, which would be those 60% design documents, guaranteed maximum price, optional financing package, and possibly some construction, whatever construction we can do early on to get it going. And then after that's approved by you, that package, then they would move in and they would build the plant. So that's kind of the process that it's being recommended. One of the things I like to do when I present these to elected officials is I like to tell you what we recommend going into the request for qualifications. So if you guys see something that you may want to add, we know up front. And so you definitely want to know about your team's experience designing and constructing water facilities. You want to know about the project professionals, the ones that are actually going to lead the project, and what their experience is. You want to know what their financial capacity is, capabilities. If they're going to provide some funding, what is that funding, and how does that look like, and how much experience do they have in it? Project development, execution plan. How are they going to execute the project to make sure they do it as fast as possible? We're going to ask for some innovative ideas to decrease that time frame. Maybe somebody comes up with a way to shave 6 months off it. We want to know what that is, and that may win them a little extra points, and maybe that's the best team. So we want to increase the process efficiency. We want to make sure we have the most efficient plant possible, because what is that going to do? It's going to cut your other costs that may help cover some of these costs. So again, everything goes back to what that bottom line is. How can you get as much money toward this project as possible outside of your rate increases you're going to need, or rate adjustments you're going to need? I think one that I find is really important that I always recommend is a building wealth program to engage these local businesses and employees. And you want these teams to come in and say, how are they going to engage these small businesses in town to help them grow on this project? Keep as much money that's in this project home as possible. Don't send it out. Now, not everything can be done here. You don't have, but you have some very good companies here that can come in, and maybe it's a small company that's maybe not big enough to do their own bonds or their own insurance. We want them to come up with the programs. How do you bring them in and help them do that? Because if they can do this project, then it helps them grow to do other projects and bid on other projects. So it really helps them. I think the other thing you want to ask for is apprenticeship programs. How do you get people into this? We need utility workers. We need people, pipe fitters and plumbers and all of that. And how do you get those people from your residents into these programs to do apprenticeship? So that would be part of that proposal. And we also want to make sure that it's a very strong public outreach and project information plan. These projects are really important to get information out weekly and monthly, so you guys have them and the public has them, so they can see what's happening. Because they're going to pay a little bit more. We're going to make that as least as possible, but they are going to pay more, and they need to see what they're getting for their money. We all like to see that. I don't like to pay something that I'm not seeing. So that's what we would put in that qualification package. So with that, I'm going to let Mr. Evans finish up, and then we're open for questions.
Madam Chair and members of the board, so you've heard a comprehensive presentation with regards to the steps that staff is interested in moving forward. This evening, we're merely asking for consensus from the board to move forward with the solicitation document that we've identified as a request for qualifications. If there is consensus for us to move forward, staff will then create the design build RFQ, finalize the document, and then issue it out on the streets. There will be subsequent opportunities throughout the entire project where you, the board, will have an opportunity to provide some insight, perspective, and ultimately the approval process starts and stops with you all. So at this particular time, staff is recommending that we move forward with the design build RFQ for the new utility district. If we are able to move forward and we get support from the board through the project, we believe that we can conceivably have site work being commenced on the property that has been acquired for the purposes of the utility district on the corner of Blue Heron and Avenue L by October of 2021. So at this time, staff is prepared to answer any questions the board may have, but looking for consensus to proceed forward with the solicitation document.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. I know that there are some questions, but let me entertain a motion to move forward with this project with an RFQ.
I make a motion that we,
Madam Chair,
Do we have a question?
We're going to have discussion after the
After the
motion is
motion.
made. Thank
but I want to ask questions of the presentation because
Yes,
yeah,
you
after the
can do
motion.
that.
to be-
You can do that once we make a motion and get a second, and we can have discussion.
well,
Thank you.
Can you
Thank you,
indulge
sir.
me to allow me to
No, sir.
clarify?
No, sir.
I make a motion to direct staff to issue the RFQ to move forward with the design, build, finance for the new water treatment plant.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy?
Thank you. That was my question. It's been mentioned design, build, finance, but I think I heard it differently from the manager, and then I also see it differently on the slide. So I wanted to find out exactly, is this the design, build, finance? And we didn't even get an opportunity to ask questions regarding,
You can
Yep.
ask whatever question you like right now, Mr. McCoy.
can I finish?
Thank you.
Mr. Evans, what you're proposing is the design, build, finance. Is that correct?
That is part of the mechanism, but that would be reviewed by the financial consultant to determine if that's the most expeditious and cost-effective way to deliver the plant. But it is an option, and that option has to be approved by you all. The firms that will come on board will provide you with a financing component, but then you as the board will make a determination as to what type of mechanism is best suited for the district.
Okay, follow up. So
Go ahead.
I want to know currently, and this is probably a Mr. Sherman question, but as been proposed, there are multiple ways, but what do we currently have as far as debt service for the utility special district? And before we enter into that very extensive conversation, Mr. Evans, I guess it really makes sense to know exactly what, if we had a ballpark expectation of, is this $100 million project that we're looking at?
Madam Chair, if I may, just to the to the project cost, right now, the anticipated project cost is well over 100 to 150 million, or 115 million dollars. There would be a situation whereby we can look at taking out some of the additional bonds that have been acquired by the district, and that can take the project up to $150 million, but Mr. Sherman can provide additional insight on that.
Yeah, again, Randy Sherman, District Finance Director. I'm sorry. Should have thought of that the first time, right? Right now, the utility district bonds are about $50 million between the 14 and the 16.
And how much do we have in reserve for current capital projects?
The balance in the bond projects is probably about $28 million right now. So that's what is remaining from the 2016 bonds.
Now, are those for capital, I guess, renewal and replacement, or can that money of the $28 million be used towards the construction of a new water treatment facility?
Yeah, when we issued the bonds, we gave a specific list of projects, which we haven't adhered to. But the bonds are 20-year bonds, so as long as what we use those proceeds on have at least a 20-year useful life, we would be okay. So taking those bond proceeds and putting them towards a new plant certainly would qualify.
Follow up. So, just 1 second, Mr. Sherman. I want to ask the question of the gentleman that provided the presentation. You said the progressive design build is a model that's being used throughout the state. So prior to this, and there's exactly nothing that references this, can we have some of those projects that you're speaking of, and in fact, who some of those developers that's taken on this public-private partnership relative to rebuilding a water treatment plant?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of examples of progressive design build in the state for water plants. In fact, neighbor south of here that where I worked, and I led the project to rebuild their water plant, progressive design build. So that was in Boynton Beach. That was a progressive design build for the water plant. As far as adding the private equity funding as a P3, in Florida, there's several projects that are underway. It's a fairly new thing, so it's not been done a lot in Florida. It's topping. Boynton Beach did just finish one that had a utility component. That was their Town Square project, and it did have a utility component as part of that P3. But it wasn't just a water plant. It was actually a district energy systems, which is a little bit different. But it was a utility. So in Florida, it's a fairly new idea, but again, it's a transparent funding mechanism. And again, it's an option. You have multiple options here. Mr. Sherman he's got several options. And the idea is you have your teams bring options, and then you also have your own staff options. And you would have a financial advisor tell you which one long-term is the best for the city, and that's the one you go with, which is best for the project. So you don't make that decision now. You make that decision when you get all of that information, and you pick what's best. So that's the easiest way to say it. But yeah, we can get you some examples of the Progressive Design Build water plants in the state.
Follow up.
No, are there any other questions? You can hold a second, Mr. McCoy. Are there any other questions for the staff and Mr. Sherman?
Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Madam Chair. Mr. Sherman, question in regards to our bond rating. Do we still have a AA bond rating?
The city itself is AA, the utility is A+. So
And I know we didn't want to get too deep in the weeds with the interest rates, but comparatively speaking, with design build finance and the bonding the city is able to obtain, as of today's rates, would we have an estimate or a exact idea of what the rate would be comparative if we decided today to lock in and we got financing today?
yeah, if you look at a 20 to 30 year bond for a AA, you're probably talking 1.8, 1.9%. If you make that taxable, you're probably talking 2.2%. And I'll tell you, we may have a A+ rating, but when we did the 2016 bonds, we traded far better than an A+ rating. So again, those rates get published, but they're a composite, of what's out there. So I would say low 2s if we're going taxable.
And then comparative, if we did a design build finance, if we went through this nonprofit organization, maybe the gentleman that's presenting could give me an idea of what those interest rates would be compared to now.
Yeah, they're generally about a quarter point higher, so 0.25%. So if you could get it for 2, it'd be 2.25. It's generally about 0.25%. The question is it's not in the best interest of the city unless you see the savings in other places that pay that back. So again, it goes back to what's in the best interest of the city, and you make that decision when those are offered. You don't have enough information now to even lock in anything right now. But I think you go down, what we're recommending, I think, is you go down a couple of paths and you figure out which is the best. You're going to have to do one of them, because one of them you have to provide some money. So one of them will have to be chosen. And you choose the one overall lifetime of the project, which is the best for the utility district. It's always the best for the customer.
Thank you. And the design build option, does the price point change for construction if we as a city use our own financing?
No, that doesn't affect the progressive design build portion of the project. That all occurs the same way. What could happen is, and I'm not saying this would, but one of the risks if the city's doing it and you get delayed, let's say you delayed 6 months, it delays locking in that guaranteed maximum price for 6 months. Same risk is on the private side too. So, you have those risks, but those are the things you do up front in the project is you identify those risks and you come up with fixes for those risks. So if they start to come up, what do? And you already have a plan in place to handle that risk as it comes up. So you don't want to wait to the last minute. You want to identify those risks. But that's a risk on any kind of financing of a project. If the financing gets delayed, it delays the project. But if it's not, the project is still being locked in early and you're getting those better prices. So they go hand in hand, but you don't have to go down just one path to get to there.
Okay. And
if that makes sense.
Final question, Madam Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. In regards to the construction cost and the comparison with the traditional RFP process, putting it out for bid and funding through the city, versus a design build, what is the percent difference in regards to the two costs of the actual cost of the plant?
Right, that's a tough question. So I'm going to answer it this way, and sorry, it's maybe a little bit longer. There's really 3 components of a cost of a building a project, of the actual construction. There's the actual construction cost. When you pour a yard of concrete, no matter who pours it, it's going to cost pretty much the same. So the cost of actually building is the same. Where the differences are is the risks. So in conventional design bid build, the contractor is bidding a set of drawings that the engineer designed. And so they're bidding in the risk to those designs. Now, the designs could be very good, but there's still risk. So they bid into those projects those higher costs. In progressive design build, you're able to decide who owns the risk. So if there's a risk in the project, let's say, and I'm not saying there is on this site, let's say the risk is contaminated soil, and you had some, and the risk ranges from a $50,000 cleanup to a $500,000 cleanup. When you bid it, the contractor's gonna bid $500,000 because he has to cover his whole risk. In a design build, the city can say, you know what, we only want you to put $100,000 in for that cleanup, and the other $400,000, if you need it, we're gonna cover it out of contingency. So now you're covering that. So in the long run, you can, the key is you're trying to get the best value for your money. And the best value is when you control what you spend and not let a contractor control it. In a bid, once they bid it, it's their money and they're going to get their money. So that, I can't tell you what the percentage is. It's really based on how the team that you pick needs to be a very good team, and then how well you manage that. That's really what drives the cost down. In my experience, you pay less for a progressive design build in the long run.
Long term.
In my experience, but there's no guarantee. It's managing the risks, because that's where your cost is. It's in the risks.
Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
to that point, just a quick statement, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, wait a second, I'm sorry, Councilman Lawson. We have other colleagues that would like to weigh in on this discussion, and I'll come back to you, sir.
Okay, it was just a closing statement, Madam Chair.
No closing statement, sir. Hold on a
Madam Chair, if
second.
you can please
No,
just let me finish what I'm
sir, there are
Madam Chair,
other
I'm just
people
letting you
who
know
want to speak to this issue.
that I understand
We will
that
come
my
back to
colleagues
you,
have
sir.
questions, and that's
No,
not the issue.
sir, no, sir. We're going to go to our next person. You've asked 4 or 5 questions. Can we get to our other colleagues to ask questions as well, sir? Thank you. Colleagues,
I have a quick question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
thank you.
You know, many of my constituents on the island, their great concern is that the pressure of a new plant, this has nothing to do with finance, it has everything to do with the plant itself. So just because this will be a question that I get, and this may not be for you, Colin, it may be for others, but the question that I will get is, will this new plant ensure that we have not only quality drinking water, which we all know it will ensure, but that the drinking water pressure, for example, will reach the north end of the island, and that if we have additional construction on the island, the capacity of the plant will be able to serve any new construction that might happen on the island and elsewhere in the city for that matter.
Short answer is yes, if you hear me.
Thanks. Then I can guarantee to my constituents that that answer is yes.
So the city already engaged a consultant.
Please use the mic.
Yeah, use the other mic.
Okay, this one's working. Here, let me hand you this one.
Okay, short answer, yes.
Okay.
The city engaged a consultant some time ago to look into this specific issue. And part and parcel with the new water plant will be looking at the hydraulics of the entire system to ensure that the pumping and storage and everything is coordinated in a manner to deliver adequate pressure to the island.
And so also my understanding of what the new system will entail will be a different source of the water, in fact, so that we're not looking only to take water from, we're looking to use the aquifer that's deeper than what we normally address.
Yes, well, the preferred aquifer is the aquifer you're currently using. That's the most accessible. It's cheaper to treat. So the city's goal will be to optimize and maximize the use of the existing supply you have, and to supplement that supply to the extent as you grow, etc., to tap into the deeper aquifer. So the plant would really be a hybrid, a combination of both the existing as well as, to the extent needed, the deeper, more brackish supply.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
I actually don't have very many questions at all because I spoke with them prior to the meeting, and so I'm fine with moving forward so that we're able to have a longer discussion when we do get to making that decision.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I apologize. Can you remind me of your name?
Colin Groff.
Mr. Broff, the design build finance requires us to under this development agreement to provide site control to whoever the proposed developer is to obtain financing?
No, the finance portion of aggressive design build RFQ is optional, and they don't have site control, which they do legally lease the property from the utility, and then they build the plant, and then you lease the plant back. But they do not control the plant. The plant and the property is controlled by the utility in the contract, in the lease. It's a triple net lease, so it's
Well, I guess that's exactly what I'm saying. So for the purposes of being able to obtain financing, they have to have control of the site.
They have to have a
Not
lease
to
on
be-
the site.
Not to be confused with operation of the site. Okay,
They have to have a lease for the site, yes.
okay. And then after that matures, then it would then revert back to USD?
Absolutely. It automatically comes back to USC as soon as it matures.
Okay, so the model that you showed in one of the slides, and I was kind of hopeful that we could address it when it was up, but you spoke about the rate stabilization. That concept is done under which model? Is it done under the design build finance model?
It's actually a model you can use in any financing. The question is you have to have funds to set up that rate stabilization fund. And so where do you get your funds from? So one of the options, if you're going to lease the land, you could, now it's not, so I don't want to say it's free money, it's not, because you're going to pay for, when they pay you for that land, they're paying you out of the bond proceeds that you're going to pay back. But it's a way to take, again, it's taking that car, instead of doing it in 3 years, doing it in 6 years. It's stretching that payment out, and you take that money and you move it up front. Now, it may not be in the best interest of the district to do this. It's an option. It may not be. But you move that money up front to help lower some of these increases at the beginning, and you push them near the end. So you spread it out a little bit. That's all it does. You're still paying the money. So I don't want anybody to get the mistake that it's free money. You're still paying it. It's just how long and you pay it and where do you stretch it.
Okay, and are we looking, or what would you be able to suggest what best practices are in terms of financing? Are these other organizations that you spoke of, are they doing 100%?
So every project is very specific to the project. So the projects that we've seen, and a lot of these are being done outside of Florida. They're in California, they're in other states. There's these kind of projects. Some projects are 100%, some projects are layered. The project that the public-private partnership that was just finished in Boynton Beach was a part, about 3/4 of the project was funded through the private equity, and the other quarter of it was funded through other sources, and there was multiple sources. In this particular case, you may want to add some funding from the federal programs or the state revolving loan fund programs, and you can do all of that. Again, these are all options that you will be brought back to you, and you will look at and say, what is in the best interest of the board? It's really nothing you're deciding now. All you're doing now is saying, let's go out and see what the market will offer us, and then we'll pick the best deal. The best deal very well may be that the utility district does their own bond, go out, get the money, and bring it back in. That's maybe the cleanest and best deal. All this is offering another option to you to make a decision whether or not it's in your best interest. And you pick the one that is in your best interest. Always.
One last question.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So
Last question.
you referenced that in one of the previous slides, and can I be, excuse me. So, Madam Chair, we didn't have any presentation. I was told today that this consultant was here, so I didn't have the opportunity to have.
You just said it was your last question, sir. I
well,
was repeating what you said.
Can you indulge me to explain that we have not seen this before? There was not in the presentation provided in the backup. So we just sat through at least an hour worth of presentation. So you should imagine before we commit to $100 million commitment or even exploring it, there's going to be a number of questions, and it's quite difficult to start on a subject.
And I have allowed you to
Can I-
ask those questions. Could you ask your question, sir?
I would like to finish.
Thank you, sir.
I would prefer that if I'm going to ask a question and I'm already on the lines of those questions, I shouldn't have to come back 15 minutes later when I want to ask a very simple question that was on the very first slide at the beginning of the presentation. It just works a lot more efficiently for the sake of us being able to jot down and understand what's being asked of us. So,
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Sir, listen. Did I hear you indicate that there is an option to build the administrative facilities separate and apart from the design build finance?
No, that's what we were talking about, is that's something that could have an early start because it's a little bit easier to design. But so it's a potential early start. In other words, you start some of the project earlier, then you don't wait for all of the 100% design on the water plant. You wait for your design for your building, and you can start. So you start construction as each design is finished for that particular component, and you can get that construction started. So that's what I wasn't saying. You wouldn't do it separately. You would have it as part of one contract, so you have one point of responsibility to make sure the project is delivered on time.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
If there are not any other questions in regards,
Madam Chair, just a quick comment, if you don't
Sure,
mind.
go
I
ahead.
just wanted to thank Mr. Groff and Ms. Jacobs for the lengthy conversation we had earlier today on this topic. It was good to have all that information coming into this meeting, and I really appreciated the time they took to share that with me. Thanks.
thank you, and I would like to also say the same thing. I'm happy to be able to have had this conversation with these individuals before the meeting to be able to get a lot of my questions out. I like the idea of having the opportunity to meet with individuals before our meeting. It is called agenda review. That means that you come to a meeting with the people who are going to make the presentation. You try and get as many questions as you can out. And then you also come to the meeting and you engage with your colleagues to be able to come up with even better questions or for it to be more clearer for you. So in saying that, I like the idea of moving forward. I like the idea of the fact that instead of looking at 6 years, we're looking at 3 years. I like the fact that we're talking about nonprofit, tax exempt, which means that we're looking at firms that are not here to make a profit off of the city or utility district. So all of those options sound fine to me. And with that also being said, we have a motion on the floor, and we have a motion and a second. And Madam Clerk, could you call the question, please?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I did ask for a final comment.
Oh, okay, well, I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
No worries. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to ensure with staff that whatever route that we do take and we embark on this, cost to our end user is going to be minimal. Because with taking on $100 million plus debt, we understand there's possibly going to be increases. So with that, we want to make sure that our residents, our businesses, and everyone that's going to be affected is a gradual increase over a course of time, and they're kept abreast as to these increases, because sharp spikes in water bills without seeing immediate gratification and improvement is going to cause for an outcry of residents. And I just want to make sure that we've kept them completely aware of that process, because if we start this process and we expedite it, this also sounds like we're going to have a sharp increase in water bills. I want to make sure that this is gradual, that this is over time, and that our residents are aware of everything that's coming down the pipeline. So that's why the financing was so important in regards to the interest rates, in regards to the timeline and time frame, because an increased time frame and an expedited process also increases potential of water bill, because we'll immediately be taking on a lease payment of $150+ million. So I just want to make sure that we preface anything that we do with making sure the residents are safeguarded in regards to that increase, because I understand that the increase will be coming. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair, just one last comment, and that is that was the first remark I think I made to you this afternoon when we had our conversation, that above all, we don't want to shock our constituents in the entire city with a huge rate increase or an increase that's unpalatable. So I'm glad that you assured me that that wouldn't have to be the case. Thanks.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Board Member McCoy?
Yes.
Board Member Botel?
Yes.
Board Member Lawson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Madam
Madam-
Clerk?
Madam Chair, members of the board, the time is now 6:49, and your public comments are slated to begin at 6:15, and we do have public comment cards.
Very good. Madam Clerk, can we proceed with public comment?
Okay, can I get you to read the statement into the record, Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am. Where is my statement? It's in the front. Oh, here it is. Public comment. Please be reminded, the Board of Directors has adopted rules of decorum public conduct during official meetings, which has been posted at the front desk. In an effort to preserve order, if any of the rules are not adhered to, the Board of Directors Chair may have any disruptive speaker or attendee removed from the podium, from the meeting and/or the building if necessary. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Public comment shall begin at 6:15 unless there is no further business of the city by the Board of Directors, which in any event, it shall be sooner. In addition, if any item is being considered at 6:15, then comments from the public shall begin immediately after the item has been concluded. Any person who would like to speak during public comments, please fill out a public comment card located at the front desk and give it to the staff before the public comment section is announced.
The acceptance of public comments for this particular section of the agenda is now closed. Media, do we have the clock to put up? Tommy L., I'm gonna mess up the last name, so I'm just gonna say Tammy L. and Randy Edwards.
Madam Clerk, is this regular public comment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, witnesses, advisors, and board. My name is Tammy Lulick. I would like to address the board for encouraging me to pursue this skating rink. I do have hand-sketched blueprints and hope to gather an array of professionally formatted PDFs along with the business proposal presented by the CRA as requested by the board as soon as possible. And looking forward to working with CRA to see out the completion of the project within 3 to 5 years, just to beat the 7-year expectation. I have spoken with Mr. Andre Lewis and expecting to excel into a violent prevention program through the criminal justice system and various martial arts styles, mainly Korean disciplinary Taekwondo. Again, I anticipate the development of this recreation center. It would not only provide an atmosphere of assistance, but create an atmosphere far from scary with excitement, exercise, and education. Perfecting the live, work, and play advertisement of Riviera Beach, located in the Treasure Coast of Palm Beach County, Florida. And with positive ambitions, I encourage all that are interested in being involved with this project, please feel free to contact me at 754-465-6304. Thank you, witnesses, advisors, and board, for hearing me out. Be safe, have fun, and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Randy Edwards.
Good afternoon, board. Mr. Lawson, I'd like to thank you for returning my call today. The people of Long Pine, that's where I live at. We had a breach in water service this morning, and this young lady here, I met her. My kids called me this morning and said we had no water. No one in the city understood what happened. There was no fail-safe in place. I left work and went home, and I think there should have been something in place. You know, letting you know that there was no water service out in that area. And I found out Grimsey Park had the same problem. Now we getting a boil water notice hanging on the door. Ms. McGee asked me to speak on her behalf. She drives straight into her garage. She said she wasn't aware of it. That says boil water notice. It's nothing put on the news. It should be put on the news so it could be a push alert, at least on the TV, so people can see the boil their water. Because a lot of people out there don't know to boil their water because it's hanging on their door. Most of them drive into their garage. The other thing I got is, out in Long Pine, you know, a lot of people drive through that neighborhood. It's an open community. They throw trash on the street. We pick up the trash. Where's the street sweeper? I had asked this a while back to Mr. Sherman. Hadn't got no response for that. We pay for that service, correct? Jonathan Evans? Mr. Evans?
Sir, familiar with your comments.
I'm just asking, do we pay for it? Okay.
We'll ask after.
Okay. And the other thing we have is, I had my water was turned off for a whole night. And I got home, found out my water service was off, and I had to take my kids and we had to go somewhere else and stay. They accidentally turned the meter, improperly installed the meter. And I had to wait a whole day to get the water turned back on. And the other thing we're asking for, we can't use the water out there for 72 hours. Do we get bottled water to brush our teeth, to drink? What do we do? That's all.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair, members of the board, that concludes comments at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, you want to address any of those comments?
Yes, Madam Chair. A couple of things, and then I'll have Ms. Jacobs provide an update with regards to the disruption in service that occurred. With regards to the resident that talked about a proposal that they'd like for the CRA and city to consider, Staff is working on that, as well as multiple items were requested as part of an email communications, and staff is putting together the email response, and that should go out towards the end of the week. With respect to the disruption in service, that was a result of a valve that staff or contractor end up inadvertently turning off. So staff did go and restored water. About an hour and 15 minutes was the time frame in which the disruption occurred. Ms. Jacobs can provide more specificities. If there wasn't any information that was placed on the website, we can make sure that that occurs, every time, and that should happen. Additionally, if communication is informed, then they can do a geofence as it relates to a text message or a phone call to inform residents of what occurred. But Ms. Jacobs can provide more specificities with regards to that.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Madam Chair, as soon as the USD staff was made aware of the issue that was going on out on Military Trail, in particular, the Long Pine neighborhood, staff went out and met with the contractor. It was determined that there was a valve that was turned off, and it wasn't as though the valve was not turned off in a way that it was wrongfully done. It was that there were other valves that were not operable that caused the interruption in the service, because if they had been in operation, the valve turning off in the actual operation dealing with the unidirectional flushing would have been okay. So we know that there are issues that exist with our valves, the ability to even locate them, that there are problems that exist. We sincerely apologize and regret, for the interruption in the service. We have put different activities in place as a result of that, especially when it comes to communication. I had no idea that it had not been communicated that those services were about to take place. We did go ahead and deploy staff to go out to the neighborhood, and they physically walked the neighborhood to instruct the residents to go ahead and boil water so that it could prevent any type of contamination that would exist. I also asked Larry Brown, he's our distribution superintendent, if he could come and explain the circumstance this evening, and I believe Mr. Brown is in the audience.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just have a question about the communication. Are you able to utilize the code red for specific areas to alert them of the notification?
This is what we were informed, Mrs. Miller Anderson, about Code Red. Even if we were to use it, because it's our understanding that Code Red is a database of those persons that have actually enjoined that particular system. So if it wouldn't necessarily be able to help us, because we wouldn't know if all of the residents that lived in the Lone Pine neighborhood were a part of that particular database.
So what about the reverse 911, the one we were using before we got the code red?
Madam Chair, if I may, with the code
Yes.
red, we can look to provide some notification for those that have subscribed, as well as we can geofence, so we can draw a circle around the particular area, and those that have subscribed to the service would receive the notification. All the numbers that are in the actual reverse 911 system have been imported into the code red system.
Yeah.
So if we did utilize that tool, those that have subscribed to either code red or are in the city's reverse 911 system would have received notification.
Okay, thanks.
As well, Madam Chair, we probably would find fault in that we could have utilized some of our own communication systems within the city, such as our website.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Good evening, Larry Brown, Superintendent on District Department. I'm kind of nervous. This is the first time I've ever been up here doing this, so.
Don't be nervous.
I'm not a good public speaker. The reason why the water was shut off, when the contractor operated a couple of valves, we have a valve that we found out that is very closed. There's no way in the way they could have noted that, but now we in the process of trying to locate that valve on Havre Hill and Military Trail. So this probably won't happen again.
Thank you so much, sir. You did very well.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, could I'll move on to our next item, please.
Resolution number 11-21 UD, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the City of Riviera Beach, Utility Special District, Palm Beach County, Florida, authorizing the purchase and delivery of a new VACCON VecJet trailer from Southern Sewer Equipment Sales in the amount of $75,684 by the use of a cooperative agreement with the Florida Sheriff's Association contract number FSA 20-EQU 18.0, specification number 362, specification number 50, authorizing the district finance director to make payment from capital machinery and equipment account number 411-31104-564-000 and providing an effective date. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do not have public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comment on this item is now closed.
I move that we approve resolution number 11-21 UD.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Evans?
Madam Chair, members of the board, staff is recommending approval of this item. This is a piece of equipment that is utilized to clean and maintain some of the sanitary sewer system. The existing infrastructure, or the existing item, is at the end of its useful life. It was acquired in 1986, and staff recommends approval of the item that's before you this evening.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussions from the board?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
So, Mr. Evans, and actually, or Ms. Jacobs, so sanitary sewer system, but the actual unclogging and the routine maintenance is done by Public Works, isn't that correct?
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
as far as it goes for the sewer system,
Could you talk into your mic?
sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
As far as it goes to our sewer system, no, utility special district has staff that provides services for its sewer infrastructure.
Okay, so the stormwater is managed through Public Works?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, good enough.
Thank you. Any other questions? Madam Clerk?
Board Member Lawson,
Yes.
Board Member McCoy,
Yes.
Board Member Botel,
Yes.
Vice Chair Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Chair Lanier.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Next item.
Resolution number 14-21 UD, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the City of Riviera Beach, Utility Special District, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving the contract with United Rentals, Inc., a corporation authorized to do business in the state of Florida, corporative contract number 062320, with Sourcewell for rental of emergency equipment, and authorizing the Utility Special District Finance Director to make payment from account number 411-311-03543000 in an amount not to exceed $150,000 from account number 411-311-04543000 in an amount not to exceed $50,000 and provide an effective date. Madam Chair and members of the board, we do not have public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comment on this item is now closed.
I move that we approve the resolution 13-21 UD.
Second.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the resolution number is 14-21 UD.
sorry. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Evans?
Madam Chair and members of the board, the item that's before you this evening is to secure backup generators for the city's lift stations, or for the utility district's lift stations. This is an annual process that the city undertakes. We are also looking to move forward with acquiring additional generators that we do not have to enter into a long-term lease agreement in subsequent years. So staff is going to spec out the cost associated with generators at the lift stations as well as portable generators. At this particular moment, staff recommends approval of Resolution 1421.
Are there any questions from the board? None being heard. Madam Clerk?
Board Member McCoy,
Yes.
Board Member Botel,
Yes.
Board Member Lawson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Chair Lanier.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Next item.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
before you move to the next item, there was a question that came up in one of the agenda review sessions with regards to this particular item. Once we did the research, it was
With the
determined-
equipment?
I'm sorry,
With the equipment?
with the generators.
Okay.
Yes, it was determined that the United Rentals is located at 1860 MLK Junior Boulevard in Riviera Beach.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Ms. Jacob, I was kind of afraid to ask that question, so I didn't want the chair to admonish me, so I just figured I would ask it off of the record because she's being very stern with us tonight. So thank you for the information.
You're welcome.
And let me just add, I was really curious why we were sending our money to a company that was based out of, was it Minneapolis?
Minnesota.
Minnesota. And certainly, I don't know that Minnesota is sending us anything but a bunch of national press. So I wanted to make sure that I asked that question, why we can't use, local businesses. So I did have a agenda review, Madam Chair.
I didn't say that you did not, sir. Thank you so much. Madam Clerk, next item.
Resolution number 13-21 UD, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the City of Riviera Beach Utility Special District, Palm Beach County, Florida, authorizing the temporary purchase of sodium hypochlorite system and product supply, and authorizing the Utility Special District's Finance Director to make payments from account number 411-31103-552000 in an amount not to exceed $50,000 and provide an effective date. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do not have public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comment on this item is now closed.
I move that we approve resolution number 13-21 UD.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Yes, Madam
Thank you.
Chair. What's a temporary purchase? I mean, you like say, I'm going to buy this, but it's only temporary. I mean, what is it what does that mean?
Sure, Madam Chair, I would say that that probably wasn't a good terminology to use.
Okay. So maybe it means,
It's
maybe it
actually
means-
for a temporary facility
Right.
that will use the actual
I
product.
got you. Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
ma'am.
That's all I had.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Board Member Botel, did you go to agenda review?
Yes, as a matter of fact,
Just check.
I do agenda
McCoy.
review every Monday to get it 2 days ahead.
Thank you. Without any, there are not any other questions, Madam Clerk.
Madam Chair, I heard a second, but I didn't get who it was. Thank you, Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Board Member Botel?
Yes.
Board Member Lawson?
Yes.
Board Member McCoy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier?
Yes.
That motion is approved.
Thank you. Next item.
Resolution number 10-21 UD, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the City of Riviera Beach Utility Special District, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving amendment number 2 to the original contract and scope of work to include the filter rehabilitation proposal from Global Tech, Inc. under the contract for design build services between the Utility Special District and Global Tech, Inc., authorizing the Utility Special District Finance Director to transfer $834,692 from project number 18129 to project number 18139 and make payments from project number 18139 in the amount not to exceed $2,134,691.94 after work authorizations have been issued and provide an effective date. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do not have public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comment on this item is now closed.
I move the resolution number 10-21 UD be passed.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board of this item? None being had. Madam Clerk?
Board Member Botel?
Yes.
Board Member McCoy?
Yes.
Board Member Lawson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. We're at the end of our agenda, and we will now have any comments or discussion by the Executive Director of the Utility Special District, Mrs. Jacobs. Any comments?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. One area of interest that has been pretty prominent over at the Utility Special District has been the water main and force main projects for water services to the Singer Island community. To that end, I asked if our city's senior engineer, John Armstrong, would just come and provide a progress report to the council and the public with regards to where we are on those particular projects.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. Good evening, Madam Chair, fellow board members, fellow city council persons, Mr. City Manager, and Mayor Felder. I'm John Armstrong and staff. There's two CIP projects for one's the Intercoastal Water Main Project and one's the Intercoastal Forest Main Project. And we retained the services of Chen Moore & Associates to do, the first part is to do a study to evaluate different alternatives, and they evaluated 4 alternatives for the water main crossing of the Intercoastal Waterway and also for the sanitary forest main. And they looked at it based on operation and maintenance, regulatory requirements, constructability, cost, impacts to the community, and right-of-way availability and easement acquisition. So along the way, we've hit some roadblocks and some speed bumps, particularly around the easement acquisition. So we met with Florida Department of Transportation because one of the options and was preferred was for the water main to be along the bridge on Blue Heron Boulevard. And we also met with the county Parks Department for Phil Foster Park. The meeting with the DOT went well. We were planning on doing a subaqueous forest main and water main. And we talked to them about the water main. That was, I guess, the preferred option for all those scenarios except for, well, you know, cost. It was the lowest cost, and it was best for all the other aspects, but that were evaluated. And so that went well with the DOT for a subaqueous water main. And we met with the Parks Department, and that went well with them. They were okay with that. And would be okay with giving us an easement. But one of the things we also have to serve, that the Intercoastal Water Main and Forest Main projects, they also serve, in addition to Singer Island, Town of Palm Beach Shores, it also serves Phil Foster Park. So we also met with the Public Works Director with the Town of Palm Beach Shores, because one of the options was, for the Forest Main, was to make landfall, if you will, on the Town of Palm Beach Shores. And we met with 2 property owners in the Town of Palm Beach Shores. We met with 2 property owners for Singer Island for easement acquisition. And so I guess some of the preferred routes that where we're at now is we have a speed hump or a roadblock, more of like a speed hump for both the water main and the forest main. The property owners said they'll give us the easement, but they want something back from the city, either a license or their property proposed development to be approved, and that has to be approved by Development Services, the Planning and Zoning Board, and also yourself, the City Council. So right now where we're at is looking at some other options. For the forest main, we're thinking about approaching another property owner, 2 of them for the forest main, and then also for the water main, we'll have to go back to the DOT to meet with them again, because we just talked to them about having subaqueous water main, and so part of it plan on to go, maybe have from the mainland to Phil Foster Park, still going subaqueous, and then look at the option of hanging the water main along the bridge from Phil Foster Park to Singer Island, so we wouldn't have to wait for that easement or obtain that easement. So, so it's more.
Chair, I'm sorry. Could you just say that again? What about the bridge?
Excuse me.
What did you say about doing something with the bridge? I missed it.
Like one of the options, the preferred option for the water main was the cheapest cost, and all the other things that we evaluated was to do a subaqueous crossing on along the north side of the Blue Heron Bridge. And so it'd be a subaqueous crossing from, what we looked at was the preferred way of constructing it would be a subaqueous crossing, which is not only under the water, but it'd be far below the soil. So we'd be well below seagrass beds, all the roots, and environmentally friendly, and it'd be deep for, you know, like the forest main out there now, is part of it that's not buried. It's so shallow, it was open cut, which disturbs the environment. So there's two segments. One maybe continued. The preferred route is going subaqueous, so maybe from the mainland, doing the subaqueous crossing to Field Foster Park, going through Field Foster Park. And what we talked about from then was subaqueous crossing the rest of the way to the island. But since one of the property owners, we'd have to get a little easement from the corner of their property, wants the city to approve a license, which has to go before development services and all that. So that'll take a while to get that. So we'll go back to talk to the DOT instead of doing a subaqueous crossing for that segment, to hang the water main on the bridge or under the bridge above the water. And preliminary discussions with them, it didn't look like it was favorable for there's already a force main there serving Phil Foster Park. So well, right now we have to look at some other alternatives that weren't evaluated in the study, so we won't have to wait for the easements.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Okay, yes.
Doesn't it seems to me, I shouldn't make a presumption, it seems to me that it might be more time efficient to deal with as I understand, if I'm thinking of the same property owner, it seems to me it might be more time efficient to just deal with his request for some kind of a permit. And I probably should talk with somebody offline about this, because it's too, I think I should not have this conversation now. But can we, before we go back to FDOT with this, have another conversation about that property owner?
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
If I may, staff will have some ideas. I just was having a conversation with the city attorney, so we can circle up and provide a strategy that we're contemplating.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Armstrong, thank you.
And the way I see it was we do both of those concurrently. So
okay, thank
not
you.
wait for one for the other to happen.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Evans, is there any discussion or comments from your office?
No, Madam Chair.
The city attorney?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilwoman Anderson?
None.
Councilwoman Botel?
No.
Councilman Lawson?
No, ma'am.
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.